first step is this, is you must decide to learn. Would you say that's true?
You have to make that decision. If you don't decide to become an investor, then you'll never get round to completing the other steps.
Right, because each step requires learning. There's one more thing I'd like to say, is start small, right? We started on small deals.
Very small, ridiculously small almost, but we cut our teeth on those to give us the confidence to go forward.
Right. The thing is, we're active learners.
All the time.
Are you constantly studying?
Constantly. Even yesterday we were talking with each other, sharing some ideas, and we both learned something new that we didn't know.
Right, and they say we learn something new every day, but the question is, what are you learning new every day? So if you want to become a property investor, step number one of Rich Dad's 6 steps is decide to be an investor in your education. True?
Right.
Then we go out there and do it, and you learn along the way as you go. Those 6 steps will make the whole process fun, easy, and understandable. So what you'll be getting from this program are not only the simple words of advice and wisdom my rich dad gave me, but you'll also be getting Dolph's and my own personal experiences. So what you'll be gaining is the inspiration, as well as the tools, but most importantly, the what?
Most importantly of all, you'll get the confidence to go out there and find your own deals, to get your own passive income, and to set yourselves up for the rest of your lives to have that income there.
So let's get started.
To help put their principles into action, Robert and Dolph chose to work with Ryan and Kim Rogers, first-time real estate investors. Having just purchased a home for themselves, Ryan and Kim had little of their own money to put down, but they were willing to learn and ready to find their first investment property.
Hi, you're Ryan and you're Kim?
Yes.
And I'm Robert and Dolph. How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, Ryan.
Nice to meet you.
Dolph, nice to meet you.
Hey, Kim.
Hi.
So I understand you've just bought your first home, and now you're interested in becoming real estate investors. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yeah.
Before we go into it, can you tell us why, or I mean, you're very young, why would you be so motivated to suddenly get involved in investing? So, Kim, why don't you?
I don't know. Well, I think a big factor for me is just that I don't want to work the rest of my life, and I especially don't want to work hard for money the rest of my life also. And I mean, I just really want to get to the point where I can enjoy life and
Not
Have
work
enough
hard all
To
your
work
life.
for a living.
have enough money to relax.
Good. And what's your motivation?
Well, I think the biggest thing is working for somebody else and not knowing if there's going to be a guarantee. With all the problems there are, you see all these big corporations going down, and the job security thing, worrying about your job, and whether that security is going to be there in the future. That's my biggest motivation. And maybe leaving up more time for family stuff. When we start having a family, it's instead of having to work hard and be tired at the end of the day where you don't have time for your family, it'd be nice to have other options to.
Well, what we're going to be talking about is basically a process that Dolph and I use, 6 steps. It's the same process my rich dad basically taught me years ago when I was just nine years old. And, well, how old were you when you bought your first property?
First property at 17.
Yeah. My first property was 24 when I actually bought something. Let me ask you this. You've already bought a house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you suspect that buying a personal residence is different than buying an investment property?
Yeah, so I think I don't know as far as we've been, I don't know if there's a difference about looking at property if it's personal or rental, but it definitely, if you're going to invest in the property for tenants to live there, it doesn't necessarily have to have the flashy things and the nice faucets and stuff like that. Paint can cover stuff up. And
They're very smart, aren't they?
Very smart, yeah. You didn't go out looking for something that you wanted to live in for the next 20 years.
Right. No.
You already had half a mind to how would this rent out as a rental proposition.
Yeah, I want to commend you, too, because looking for a personal residence is different than looking for an investment property. The process is basically the same, but there are subtle differences, right?
Right. You should never let emotions come into an investment property. As we always say, fall in love with the deal, but not with the property. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes to a home to live in, at some stage, you're going to want to have certain personal, emotional factors come into play. Would you enjoy living there? And since you're going there every night, you might as well enjoy it. But for an investment property, you should never let that rule.
So anyway, do you have any questions for us or anything you'd like to know? Or
I guess just, starting out as an investor, you don't understand the whole real estate process. We just bought our first home, but it seems like they kind of rush you through it and, everything kind of holds you. But as far as investing and learning how the investment process works, I guess that's, where to start and how to come up, we're limited on money. And if you're limited on money, how do you get going in the real estate,
That's great.
I think one of my questions would be is that now that we have first bought our first property and we do want to invest further in real estate, how would you do that? We've used all our sources of money and things like that, and how do you move on?
And you're still in school, right?
Yeah.
That is a big issue. For most people, they say to buy real estate, you need a lot of money. Real estate is more expensive than a stereo or a car or anything, so it's easier to buy those things first rather than the real estate. And the interesting thing is that to buy real estate, you don't really need the money. And we're not even talking about the bulk of it in the form of the mortgage. Most people think you still need a down payment of 10 or 20%. And the interesting thing is you can get away without even having to put up cash for that down payment. Now, we're getting into some pretty fancy techniques, which we'll share more information on later, but just to give you the seed of an idea, the biggest source of finance that you can use for your down payment that most people overlook is when there's a house on the market. You can go to the seller and simply say, would you be willing to leave in 20%? And often they will say, no way, I need the money, but very often, surprisingly often, they'll say, yeah, that sounds reasonable. It might be an elderly couple that's going to go into retirement. They're going to take the proceeds and put it in the bank. And in the bank at the moment, you can't get more than about 2%. You might offer them 6% interest on that money, a second mortgage, and they'll be happy. They'll thank you for it. So I don't think that not having the money is the biggest stumbling stone at all.
I think if you go and see the process that Dolph and I will take you through, like I said, leave the money at home. Just go through the process. In other words, never leave money or not having money be the excuse for you not to invest. Because what has happened for my wife Kim, she's named Kim also, is that we've never found a deal we could really afford. I mean, most of the time we found deals and we're going, holy moly, this is a great deal. You know, we're going to make, if I put this deal together, I'm going to make a lot of money. And not that it sounds that good, but that old saying from the movie Wall Street, greed is good. You know, I mean, when you find a way, when you find a hot deal, doesn't it inspire you?
That is so good that you can't let it go. You'll find the money one way or another.
The great thing about the two of you, you bought your first house, you realize you're short on funds, but you're still out there looking. And I think that's the most important thing.
Right, that's what's going to put you into a position to be able to do a deal somehow.
The trick with being a real estate investor, you have to buy something that puts money in your pocket every month and keeps going up in value, hopefully. So you've already started on a good footing, so congratulations.